Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. We have some things to discuss. We have the Frozen Four already locked in place for early next month in Tampa, Boston University, Minnesota, Quinnipiac, and Michigan. I'm surprised I remember all that. Yeah, and but we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So let's talk about the dumbest invention in recent memory. Are you hearing an echo? I'm hearing an echo. Okay. So the dumbest invention is the smart typewriter. That's right, folks. For $699, you could get this square box that sits on your desk, and it has a keyboard, and it has a little screen, and on that little screen, there's words, and then if you flick a switch, it saves it to the cloud, and you have a typewriter. Like, it's what everybody wanted or wants. And I just thought to myself, and the sales pitch, I first saw it on Instagram, and they're like, well, if you have writer's block, everybody knows this is the best way to get rid of it. And I'm thinking, why would I spend $700 on this thing when I could get a Chromebook for like $200 that does 1,000 things more? And I'm just at a loss.
Well, okay. First of all, there is a free version of this. It's called voice recognition software, folks. It's called Otter, or there's other ones where
this is its own little self-contained.
I know that's dumb because then it saves it to the cloud. Then you have to transfer it from the cloud to Microsoft Word or whatever you're doing. That's asinine. You can type or you can talk into your phone that uses Otter or some other software, and it gets 95% of what you say. You have to go in and edit it, fine, but then it saves it. You go in, you copy it, you paste it, and you can put it in a blog. You can put it on whatever, on your like on Word or on whatever software you want to use. And you're not spending $700. You're spending nothing. So I don't get it.
I don't get it either. It's just kind of ridiculous, and I just laughed. Otter, if it were a little better, I'd use it, but on like 1,000-word article, it's too much editing. I'd rather just do my own thing.
Yeah, no. I mean, yes, but I'm just saying, as opposed
to a short article, I could see it.
Yeah, $700 for nothing, or $700 or nothing, and a little work as opposed to no work. And I'll bet you anything, if you're talking into this goddamn typewriter, it's not going to get every word right.
On the typewriter, Mike, you're not talking. You're typing. It's its own. You missed the point on this. It's a typewriter with a little screen, and it has the ability to go to the cloud. It's kind of like that old style word processor that came out like before good laptops came out.
Okay, I don't understand the need for the typewriter. You could be right. It's the dumbest invention.
It really is, and they're just like they're selling it as a way to get past writer's block. And I'm thinking,
no, I mean it's not even a way to get past carpal tunnel because you're typing.
Right.
So no. Okay. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, March 27th, 2023.
I'm Russ Cohen, and next week we'll reinvent the wheel.
I'm Michael Agello, and isn't the wheel square? And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's just off the top, because people in the chat are talking about some of the signings that are coming out.
People, who are these people?
Oh, well, Flamester. So it's like, he doesn't count, right, Randy? But no, some of the signings in coming out of the NCAA after teams have been eliminated, and a couple of notable ones. We'll start with the Flames signing Matthew Coronado out of Harvard. He was their first round pick a couple years ago. Very excellent NCAA career, and he signs a entry-level deal with the Flames.
Yeah, I really like Coronado. He's a smart kid. He's a fast kid. He can play either wing. He could be a second line player. I think he has a chance to be a second line talent. Definitely a third, but could be a second because there is a level of playmaking that he has that's really good. He does have a level of scoring. It'll still take a little while. I think the physical strength has come along, but I do think there's some time in the AHL to be spent, and that's fine. But I do really, I like him. I think he's better than Peltier, as an example. I know some people are like, well, is he just kind of like that? And it's like, no, he's better than that. So again, give him a little time, but I think they'll have something good there.
Yeah, and I know, and Flamester can confirm this in the chat. There was some concern apparently that he was going to go the way of VC and other, a couple other Adam Fox, and stay at Harvard another year, go to August 15th and sell his wares on the open market. And that might have been concerned because they traded Fox to Carolina because they couldn't sign him, and then Carolina traded him to the Rangers because they couldn't sign him. So but it's good news for the Flames that they got him signed. The other Harvard player was Sean Farrell, who signs a 3-year ELC with the Canadiens. And boy, did he have a really good career with Harvard. 53 points in 34 games this year. What do you think of him?
Yeah, he's second or third line or bust. Like, that's where you're at with a guy like Sean Farrell. He's got high-end speed. Probably still needs to get a little stronger, even though he did get a little stronger at Harvard. Playmaking ability, scoring ability, good hockey IQ. Not the biggest guy, though, and that's something where I don't think he's like super elusive. So we're going to see how that works as he goes up the ladder. But the talent is there, and then you just have to see what he can do with that in the NHL. Now, if he were to team up with like a Caulfield and they had someone like a Josh Anderson on that line, a bigger guy, but of course none of them are centers, but I'm just saying as an example, you could do a setup like that where even the center is the bigger guy, or even Suzuki. That might be enough. They might be able to do it because the speed would be very good. But Farrell's going to take a little time though. During the pandemic, he went back to the USHL. He scored like 102 points. That was smart for him. He's a little older than some of the other guys at Harvard, and again, I still think play him a full year at Laval before you have to worry about it.
And the third from the Crimson was Henry Thrun, whose rights were traded at the deadline from Anaheim to San Jose, which would lead you to believe that the Sharks had an inside track on getting him signed. He signs a 2-year ELC, burns the first year this year. Bonuses on the deal. Had a really good year with the Harvard. Your thoughts on him?
Yeah, really good, smart defenseman, good skater. I like everything he does. I think this was great for the Sharks to be able to get a guy who maybe could be a second pairing guy for them. Just the same way they had really good luck with Mario Ferraro, I think they're going to have really good luck with Thrun. I don't know if he'll be able to get close to a point a game like he is in Harvard. I don't think so. But I can go back to where, every level, even when he was with the NTDP, he would score a certain amount of goals because he does have a very good shot. He's a very good puck mover. So he is a guy that certainly could get 35, 40 points in a season. And so, yeah, I like it. Good size. I think, 6'2". And yeah, this is terrific for them. Like, this is what the Sharks have to get to start to get better, and they're lucky this is somebody that fell in their lap.
Yeah, they need cheap talent. I mean, he's a talented player, but they need cheap talent on ELCs to sort of counterbalance some of the big onerous contracts that they have if they want to be competitive in the next couple of years. They have Eklund on his ELC, but they have too many of the Carlsons and the Vlasics and the Coutures and Hurdles.
They play the complete game, and that's good. The weird thing is, and this is where I feel for Anaheim, they still have trouble attracting college free agents. If you get drafted college guys there like Zegras, they'll go. But as far as free agents, they don't seem to want to go there.
Yeah, with with Thrun, he was a 4th-round pick in 2019, so he really had them over a barrel. If they didn't want us, if they weren't going to give him, like Schedule A bonuses, and if you look at his contract with San Jose, he gets the bonus equivalent of a 1st-round pick, and he was a 4th-round pick.
Yeah, I would have to believe Verbeek would give him that. Why wouldn't he? I know.
I mean, you would think, but I mean, their defense isn't overloaded. Right now they have, Shattenkirk's a free agent. They didn't trade him. Maybe they think they can get him back, but he's older defenseman. Jamie Drysdale was hurt this year.
Yeah.
You have Cam Fowler there. They're not particularly deep on the blue line. So, yeah, they only got a 3rd-round pick for him. I would think that his value as a player would have been more, unless he just wasn't sold on him. And
right. And in the end, that may have been it. And then, again, we go back to for some reason they have trouble with college free agents and college guys that going there unless they're really super high end. So now college free agent does have the one thing. It's the best thing in hockey, really, if you think about it, because the college free agent can do whatever the hell they want. Now he didn't get to that point. But Anaheim obviously knew we got to get rid of him now because he's not signing here. So they were smart. But just even the other guys, that do come up in August that other teams don't want, those guys get their pick, man. That's a good way to go.
Yeah, and the other one who honestly, until he was signed, I had never heard of, but he had a really good year. I think it was his junior year at Western Michigan, was Max Sassone, who was signed to a 2-year ELC by the Vancouver Canucks. And again, college free agents, undrafted college free agents, are a free swing. It's an ELC. Even if he doesn't work at the NHL level.
Organizational depth.
He could, right, exactly. He could work at the American Hockey League level. So at Western Michigan, he had 42 points in 38 games. It's very.
I don't know a lot about.
I don't know about anything. I don't know. He came out of the USHL.
Yeah.
Cedar Rapids and Waterloo. 2 years at Western Michigan. Hit it big this year with 42 points. Good college career, and now he gets a chance to prove himself in the pros. But
I don't see a lot of Western Michigan games, and so I'd have to go back in my USHL notes, and who knows what I would drag out on them. But this doesn't, off the top of my head, can't tell you.
But this is the thing with college free agents. They're really hit or miss. I mean, it's in Toronto, covering Toronto, I had exposure to a lot of them because over the last 6 or 7 years, the Leafs have brought in a lot of college free agents. They hit it big on Tyler Bozak back in the day, and he arguably is one of the most successful undrafted college free agents ever. He became a okay number 1 center and then a number 2 and 3 center in Toronto and St. Louis. Piled up a bunch of points with Phil Kessel, had a good career, won a Stanley Cup in 2019 with the Blues. But not only that, like a guy like Trevor Moore was an undrafted free agent out of the University of Denver, won a job, won a Calder Cup, was traded to the LA Kings, and I think it was the Muzzin deal. And then, no, it wasn't the Muzzin deal. It was the Jack Campbell, Kyle Clifford deal.
Okay.
So, got an opportunity going back to Southern California where he's from, then signs a big contract with the Kings. I mean, it's a success story. Now, the guy I mentioned, Tyro Hirose, and I think his younger brother is out there in terms of being an undrafted free agent.
Yeah.
Hirose was at Leafs camp one of the years before he signed a free agent deal with Detroit. And he didn't work out, but it's like, that's the thing. It's like they're not all guaranteed to be successful and they're not all guaranteed to be failures. It's sort of hit or miss.
Yeah, it's weird. With Hirose, like the one that Taro, the one that Detroit has. He's got a lot of skills, man, but he's stuck in Grand Rapids. He's got 50-something points each of the last 2 years. Comes up to the NHL and doesn't really do it. Now, what did you say? Who did you say the other name was for? You were talking about Tanner Hirose?
Yeah, well, it must be his younger brother because
not. It's not because his brother's listed on EP as Akito Hirose. So
okay, so maybe it's just the same last name and
same last name. So yeah.
I mean, it's again, Russ would know them a lot more than I was because Russ sees a lot of college games. And I don't. I hear about these players when they come up to being free agents and then study up on them.
Yeah, but even one that I just saw, Ryan O'Connell, Leafs prospect. I got to tell you, like for a guy who transferred as a fifth-year guy, which again, kind of similar if he would have just gone to the AHL, but instead got a chance to play in NCAA hockey on the top pairing. He's a pretty good defenseman, a good puck mover. He's safe. He knows what he's doing. I'd sign the guy because you can't have enough defensemen. He's got a little size to him. And yeah, if he's a guy who fits in over time, that's fine. Or has to be an emergency guy, that a recall, you could use him. And again, these are the kinds of guys that you have to have around because you just never know one year when all of a sudden you're down to like your 8th and 9th defenseman.
Right. Yeah. Now, just on the Leaf page briefly, then we'll talk about the league in general here. Matthew Nyes and Mike Kester, who is a Leaf draft pick, and he's 5'9" and 172 pounds, so he'll get signed by the Leafs. But Minnesota advanced to the Frozen Four, beating St. Cloud State on Saturday, and that, it's good news for Nyes and Kester, and it's good news for Minnesota, but for the Leafs in terms of their want to get Nyes in some games before the playoffs to see, where things lie. It's not good news because the Frozen Four starts April 6th and April 8th for the championship game. And after that, the Leafs have 3 games before the end of the regular season. And I've been saying for a while, unless they got eliminated early,
there's not going to be hard to work, man.
Yeah, there's not going to be enough games for them to really get comfortable with him. And as we know, and when it comes to the playoffs, there's not a lot of practice time. There's not a lot. They want to conserve their energy during 7-game series. So I would say that, they're obviously they're going to sign him because he's a big prospect, and obviously they're going to give him. They don't have to play him a game to burn the first year of ELC. I guess with the new CBA, it changed. If you're 20 years old and you're signed to a contract and it includes the current year, it's burned automatically. So they, now they could sign him to a future ELC and have him play with the Marlies, but I think the Leafs want the option of being able to use him in the playoffs if they go deeper.
He'll be a black ace, and if they put him in there for a game because there's injuries or they just want to mix it up, then
or they want to give him the experience of being with the group, which is always
he'll definitely get that because he'll travel with the team. That's part of being a black ace. I mean, the Red Wings were famous for having all their guys do that, and it worked out for a long time. So yeah, I could see him doing that, and then you see what happens. But yeah, this is probably the worst case scenario for trying to get him worked into the team because now, even after his season ends, you're not getting him the next day. You know what I mean? He's got to get back to Tampa to wherever he's going, and
I mean, knowing Kyle Dubas and the Leafs, they'll be at the Frozen Four. No,
I get it, but then there's also the immigration part of it. Because now, if he has to go to Toronto I don't know where their first game would be after he's done.
They're actually on the road the final games of the season, so that might be beneficial to them. They can work. Yeah, the final 3 games of the season are all on the road: Florida, Tampa, and the Rangers. So
that's a help because he'd be down there. So maybe they can get him into a couple of them.
And by the time that that week is over with, knowing the connections that these NHL teams have, they probably can get a provisional green card or whatever they call it in Canada. So it'll be
possible that he only gets in 1 game because they can't get his card that quick. You never know.
Right. So we will see. But just going to some of the games and some of the happenings on the weekend, the game that we talked about on Off the Post. We had Greg Wyshynski on Off the Post on Sunday, and it was striking regarding that Boston-Tampa game on Saturday. It ended up being 2-1. It was a very playoff-style game, and I heard Jeff Merrick talking with Joe Smith from Tampa Bay about the beginning of that game because John Cooper essentially sent out Patrick Maroon to stir it up with Garnet Hathaway. They ended up dropping gloves, and Ross Colton did with I think Lauco. So it was a physical contest. In the end, the Bruins won 2-1. But maybe Cooper. I mean, Cooper clearly is trying to spark something.
Yeah, they're just trying to goon it up a little,
but he has not been pleased with the way that team is playing right now, and maybe he thinks subconsciously they're like, oh, we can turn it on, no problem.
They are, but like, what can he do about it? He really can't do anything about it. They kind of like are disinterested in the rest of the regular season because really, like, they don't know, they're not going to go anywhere higher or lower in the standings, and their fresh meat, the Toronto Maple Leafs, is waiting for them. And I mean, that's it, right? I mean, they know what's ahead of them, and yes,
if they were playing any other team, I would say Tampa, Cooper and Tampa should be worried because they're sort of taking it lackadaisically. Against the Leafs, it's balanced because I think right now you still have that inferiority complex and that fear of the Leafs and playoffs and everything else rearing its ugly head. It did it last year. They dominated Tampa in game 1, and then Tampa came back in game 2. And then they dominated in Tampa in game 3, and then Tampa came back in game 4. And then they won game 5 in Toronto, and then they lost in overtime in game 6, and they lost by a goal in game 7.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to say the Leafs can't beat them, but it's just they know the opponent so well. Even with the changes, they're not worried about it. Whether that's right or wrong, they're just not.
Now, I think some people are right in the sense that, yes, you can't just simply turn it on when game 82 ends and the first round of the playoffs begin. But that team
have been known to do it.
Yeah, that team can do it. That team has done it. They've done it in series. Last year, Vasilevsky played with his head up his ass for the first 5 games. And then game 6 and game 7, he was vintage Vasilevsky, VV, double V. He was just there. He was great in the game. In the game 6, he stoned them blind a couple times, and then in game 7, they allowed 1 goal. It's that goalies that pedigree have a nasty habit of doing that.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, a record was set, a team record, over the weekend, and somebody that I've been trumpeting, Dougie Hamilton. Believe it or not, his 19 goals as a defenseman is a club record.
Wow, really? More than me? Well, Niedermayer wasn't really a scoring defenseman.
But Niedermayer, Rafalski, they had Rafalski would score. Like,
it seems this year there's a lot more goals from defensemen that like Brady Shea had 14 goals. Tyson Barrie, who played on Edmonton, had 13 goals. He scored 1 against the Leafs yesterday. So like a lot of goals. Usually there's 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And, Carlson obviously and Makar and whatever, but there's a lot of defensemen who have been in double figures this year.
Yeah, no, Rafalski had 13 with the Wings. He didn't have as many with the Devils. He had only 9 was his high. But I'm sure Niedermayer was in double figures.
Yeah, I'll check it while we. Well, okay, so now the Bruins, so they beat Tampa, and then they go and they beat Carolina 4-3 in a shootout without Bergeron.
Yeah, 14 was his high, but he had 14, 11, 11, 14. That's Niedermayer.
Without Bergeron, without Marchand, I think without Hampus Lindholm. They sat all 3 of them, so they're load managing. And why wouldn't you? You've locked the Atlantic, you've locked first place in the East. Why wouldn't you give veteran guys a day off? It's smart. I would do it.
Of course, yes, you have to right now. Everybody's banged up. Why would you want guys to stay banged up?
Right, exactly.
I do want to talk about what Dan B has going here. Yeah. I'll take him at face value because I know they've been pushing Nyes in advertising. And he isn't the best player in the Big Ten. Adam Fantilli is by far.
Well, he's not even
he's not even the best guy on his team or his line.
No, I was just saying he's not even the best guy on his line. But you know what? He might win the Hobey Baker because Snuggerud and Cooley and Fantilli are all freshmen,
right?
And then there are 3 goalies who are in the Hobey Baker running.
I think Devin Levi may end up winning the Hobey though.
He very well could. He had a really great year. But I'm just saying, okay, is there overblow, for lack of a better term, in Toronto about Nyes? Yes. Is he a great prospect? Yes, he is. Sure. Now, but the thing is, it's like, right now, I think there's nothing in Toronto. They've almost locked up second place in the Atlantic. Okay, they won yesterday. They're 7 points ahead of Tampa with a game in hand. they pretty much locked up second place in the Atlantic. So they locked up home ice advantage. Okay. There's really nothing to play for. There's nothing to talk about until April 17th when game 1 starts at Scotiabank Arena again with Tampa visiting against Toronto. So they're going to look for any story. And GSM, shut up. He's not overrated. He is a very good prospect.
He's a really good prospect. But just to give so people can put it in perspective, 21 goals is terrific in college. 41 points in 38 games is really good. Just to put that up against somebody, Adam Fantilli had 29 goals in 35 games and 64 points, and he's 18 now. He just turned 18 recently. So, that's superstar capability, and Nyes is very good capability.
Tell us about the goal that you saw and where he slots in now in terms of the draft.
Yeah, so I mean, he's still slotting in second for me. He was third for a little while, but the play was, and it happened in my end, so I got a really good view of it. And it was on the power play, and he decided that he was going to go in on the net. And Penn State's goalie, I think his name's LaRue, played really well. Like he's been really good, but basically we're talking about Fantilli having just this little spot. And he was just like, bing, he gets the puck, he goes right to the net, boom, top shelf. And that started everything. That tied up the game. Then it went to overtime. But in between periods, he basically said, we just got to clean up our game a little bit, and then we'll win this game. And 51 seconds later, Samoskevich, who just had a little bit of room in the offensive zone, he kind of snuck into the zone, and he had a little bit of room there because they were playing off him a little. And he flexed his stick, man, and that shot, I didn't even see it. Like, I knew they scored, and because there was a crowd around him, because Samoskevich is not the biggest guy, it took a minute to figure out who scored the goal because I'm all the way at the far end. But it was tremendous. And it's unbelievable. Fantilli's back checking. Like, he really reminds me of Austin Matthews in a lot of ways. So there's such a high end there. And Nyes has a very high end too, but not like that. Nothing like that. That's all. It's just he's more of a meat potatoes guy. Yes, he's got terrific hands. He doesn't have the speed that Fantilli does. He doesn't have the all-around game, but he still could be a second liner. It's a possibility.
Now, starting with the East, and we'll look at the playoff picture. Carolina is 3 points up on New Jersey. Carolina's got a game in hand, so they have a slight advantage, but it's not impossible that New Jersey catches them. The Rangers are at 96 points, 4 points behind New Jersey. But honestly, home ice advantage when it's New York versus New Jersey, what does it matter?
No.
There'll be so many Rangers fans buying up tickets in Newark that it'll seem like MSG. So
that's the one thing. If you're a Devils fan and you want to guarantee yourself a good series, don't sell your tickets. But otherwise, the Ranger fans are going to buy them. They don't care what they spent. They're going to be there, and there's going to be 60% Ranger fans if you allow them to be.
In the Atlantic, obviously, the Bruins have locked up first place. They've locked up first overall, and the home ice advantage for the entire eastern portion. And I believe, it's pretty much guaranteed that they've won the President's Trophy. So they're gonna coast, and maybe Montgomery will be cognizant of the fact that you can't coast the last 2 weeks and just turn it on like Tampa.
With those veterans, though, it's going to be hard to have them not coast if you think about it.
But I think they'll rotate these guys. I think you'll give Krejci a night off. You'll play Swayman more than Allmark, whatever. I mean, it's just I think that's a smart way to go. Toronto is at 97 points at 73 games. Tampa at 90 points with 74 games. I'm not saying it's over with. There's one more game between Toronto and Tampa the last week of the season. I have a feeling that game, if the Leafs are up 4 or 5 points, Matthews is going to get sat, Marner's going to get sat,
Yeah.
and Kyle Clifford and Wayne Simmons will be in the lineup. And because the knuckle dragging Neanderthals with Tampa Bay, the bottom line guys are going to be running people because they're sending a message. It's a prep game. So Keefe would be smart not to play some of his veterans, not because they're scared, but because they'll be targets, and there'll be targets.
So, yeah, we got to talk about the East, the wild card race.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go next.
Good, because it's fascinating. It is.
Okay. So as you know, folks, and I don't know if Joe Morello is in the chat, but as you know, I don't like the Islanders. And the reason I don't like the Islanders is because their fans are a bunch of behemoths, a bunch of morons, stemming from the Tavares stuff. But I also think that they just have a sense of entitlement that just is ridiculous. Yeah, okay, your Stanley Cups were in 1980 to 83. Get over yourself. But I love Sorokin. He is a great goaltender. And Sorokin may be the only reason that you make the playoffs this year. Because right now, with 2.5 weeks left to go in the regular season, the Islanders have 83. The Penguins have 82. Florida has 79. Buffalo has 76. Buffalo has the most games left, 10. The Islanders have played the most games, 74, so they have 8 games left. If the Islanders wanted to shut everybody up, shut me up, slam the door, all they had to do was play this weekend. And what did they do? They lost to Columbus in overtime, and they lost 2-0 to Buffalo at home.
And I watched that game. I watched a lot of that game, and they didn't lose because of great goaltending. They lost because Buffalo was quicker to the puck, and the Islanders really were having a lot of trouble offensively, just kind of getting it going. And, amazingly, Brock Nelson did score like that first game back after his injury, but I still think he's going to have a few ups and downs. But, and they've gotten a great season out of Zach Parise, who I've always been a fan of, getting 20 goals. Like, that's tremendous. But if they're not getting that extra production out of guys, again, you can't expect all their guys to be having career years. It's not going to happen. And so they kind of put a Band-Aid on their situation. And while Florida had a 2-0 lead and blew it against the Rangers, and they did blow it, and I thought Bob really blew it, you kind of look at it and you say, I don't know, man. This is coming down. To me, it's still coming down to the wire. Like, it's just, I get that they have Sorokin, but they're very easily could lose 2-0 to a lot of teams. And that's what you have to sort of worry about if you're an Islanders fan, because if you're looking at it legitimately and saying, okay, where are the goals coming from? But right now, Barzal is not going to be on the next trip.
Right.
I just saw that.
Here's the Islanders' remaining schedule: 8 games. Tonight they play the Devils at home. Then on the road, Washington, who are out of the race, but they're not going to lay down. At Tampa, game still means something. Back to back at Tampa, at Carolina. Okay, 2 tough teams. Then three of the last 4 games of the season are at home. Tampa, Philadelphia, then at Washington, and then they finish with Montreal. Okay, they've got some games there that they should win, but they should have won against Columbus, and they surrendered a point. So they got one of a possible 4 points. They need to score. They need, now they must have used up their week's quotient of goals when they scored 7 against Toronto.
I mean, yeah, Horvat's got 10 points in 22 games. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. Palmieri's got 28 points on the season. Like, Zach Parise has more points than Kyle Palmieri, and it's a positive for Zach Parise. It's horrible for the Islanders that that's the case. Pajot has 35 points. Whatever you think of Pajot, he's underperforming. He is. Yeah. Nelson,
you're not getting bang for the buck there when he's making $5 million and he's got 35. For $5 million, he should be a 45 to 50 point guy.
Right. He's not. Parise's not. I mean, barely. Bailey is way past not. And he's another $5 million guy. I know he's a glue guy, but again, the Islanders just have too many glue guys. So we'll see. I mean, that was a game where I was surprised that they couldn't penetrate Buffalo because they don't have the greatest defense. We know that.
And Comrie didn't stand on his head in that game either. So it was more the fact that they didn't get good scoring chances.
Yeah. And as far as Pittsburgh, look, you could say whatever you want about them. I get it. You could say Casey DeSmith isn't that great. Check. You could say their defense isn't that great. Check. Although Petrie may be back tomorrow.
Right.
That would be a huge boost for them if he was. You could say anything else you want about them, but the thing that they have is they've got two guys. They got Crosby and Malkin, where at times can take over a game, and they've both done it recently.
And Letang.
And Letang, when he's sort of right. I don't think
he still got it. Got it.
I just don't think he's quite there this season right now after what happened. But those two guys in particular, you're talking about two guys that could take over a game, and they don't always do it, but they've been doing it at important times, keeping them in this race. And they might and look, I saw Jeff Carter wasn't at practice. Maybe he's got some things he's got to sort out. Maybe he'll start to play better, as a result. If they get Jeff Carter even playing remotely like Jeff Carter could, that's enough for them to get in the playoffs. I'm not predicting great things for them, but I'm just saying getting in the playoffs still looks like a pretty good possibility for them.
Well, okay, here's the Penguins schedule.
Yeah.
The next two games are, I'd not say easy because no game is easy, but okay, at Detroit, and Detroit is out of the playoff race, and then at home against Nashville, who lost Matt Duchene for week to week with a hand injury after he got hit with a shot. So he's probably done for the season, you would think. So, Nashville's been able to hang in there with guys like Luke Evangelista and a few other guys, but, losing Duchene is maybe the coup de grace.
Yeah.
Okay, then in April, a home game with Boston. Good luck. Back to back with a home game against Philadelphia, and Philadelphia always plays Pittsburgh tough, no matter how good or how bad Philadelphia is. At New Jersey, against Minnesota, at Detroit. Now, the last three games here, at Detroit, Chicago at home, and at Columbus. You can't get three easier games than that. So I think, even with Tokarski and Casey DeSmith, I think Pittsburgh is, if you're talking about odds, I think Pittsburgh is in more than the Islanders are in. Based on
I'm not going to argue. I can't argue with that, even though the Islanders have the better of the goalie. It's everything else that's at play here, and hard to argue. I'm not saying the Islanders are out of it. Obviously, they're right in it, but the other teams are still there too. Some breaking news: Emil Andre did get signed to his ELC from the Flyers. It took a little longer. He came over, on a tryout. He had a good first game. He had a point in there, and so they gave him his contract. So that was smart because he's a really good offensive defenseman who's got a little bite. He reminds some people of Torrey Krug, but he's the gold standard of that size, that type of defenseman. So I don't know if he'll reach that height, but he's got talent.
Now, okay, Florida, as we've, they lost 6-2 to the Leafs. They looked terrible in that game. They lost 4-3 to the Rangers. So they've blown opportunities here. They're still in it, but it might be over with this week. Here are the three, there are three games on the road: in Ottawa tonight, at Toronto on Wednesday, at Montreal back-to-back on Thursday. I think they need 4 of a possible 6.
Boy, Montreal could really be a big-time spoiler here.
Yes, but they need 4 of a possible 6 in that stretch to stay in it. Then in April, they have the majority of their games at home, so that means at least 5,000 people will be there. They finish out the road trip at Columbus, again, a game that they have to win. Then a head-to-head with Buffalo, and Buffalo might still be in the race. Ottawa again, at Washington, and then they finish at home against Toronto and Carolina. So, it's a tough. I think their schedule is tougher.
They have home games. That's the big thing for them.
They have 4 home games in the last 5 games. That's
a big deal.
Now, I think if the Islanders trip up or Pittsburgh trips up, then the Panthers, if they're within range with the 4 home games, have an opportunity there. Now Buffalo has the most games, and I know that like right now, everybody's saying, "Oh, like we're still in it. We're still." This is the thing, and being in Buffalo, it's like I can smell the BS from a mile away because that's where it's coming from. After the trade deadline, they lost 8 of the next 10 games. Okay, yeah. Their fate was probably sealed there. And I've said it a couple times on the show. They needed to improve their goaltending to stay in the race. They didn't do it. And now, okay, when the pressure's off, now they've won 2 games in a row. Now, again, they still have games in hand, and they can get closer with the games in hand. They play Montreal tonight. They have to win that game. If they lose it, I think they're done. Then they have 3 days off, and they play the Rangers at home. Then in April, at Philadelphia, at Florida, at Detroit. Okay, the Florida game is a must because they're in a race with Florida. But at Philadelphia, at Detroit, those are games they should win. But they finish off the season with 5 games in 7 nights.
Ooh, that's bad.
And it's like an afternoon game against Carolina, then back-to-back Rangers and Devils in MSG and at New Jersey, then home to Ottawa, and then back-to-back the next night, a makeup game against Columbus on the final day of the season, because that was the day I think of the blizzard that they couldn't get out of Buffalo. Right. So I mean, I think the schedule, yes, they have more games, but the schedule works against them in terms of the number of games in the number of days.
No, it's well put. Just to mention on Tankathon, the Flyers have now put themselves in the 7th spot. They overtook Arizona. I'm not sure that's a great thing. Detroit's after them. They're in the 8th spot, then St. Louis, then Vancouver, then Washington. The thing about it is, like, Philly's got a 6.5% chance at Bedard. Detroit's got a 6, St. Louis at 5. I think the Flyers are already in a bad spot. I think once you're at 7, you're pretty much out of the running for the top 3. I think you got to get extremely lucky because you can move up 5 spots, right? But
it's right. You can finish as low as 11 and still have a percentage of winning
at the top. But the odds are, once you're trying to move up like 4 or 5 spots, if you don't get the top, it's hard to do. Like they did that with Nolan Patrick at the time. But to expect Lightning to strike twice again, not great. And to miss out on the top 3 in this draft, not great. So Detroit can suffer that a lot better than Philly can, because Detroit has some super high-end talent already. Philly needs more. St. Louis, it's no big deal there. Now, Washington, imagine if Washington did get Connor Bedard.
Well, it's funny because I listened to part of it, and I was writing, so I didn't get a chance to like really be completely attuned to it. But Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick were talking about Washington and how they've fallen off, and that there's talk about them trying to trade Evgeny Kuznetsov. And I'm like, with the contract that he has and the problems that he has off the ice, who the hell is taking Evgeny?
Yeah, there's still some photos out there that probably are not desirable by a lot of teams and their security departments.
Yeah, so I mean, good luck with that. And they were also talking about Laviolette being in the final year of his contract and how, maybe he doesn't come back. I don't know if it's his choice or if it's their choice. But, I mean, they're a team in transition, and they're a team that's in a situation that is not advantageous because they want to keep the team as good as possible for Ovechkin so he catches Gretzky. Right. But really, if it wasn't for that, they should rebuild. But they're not going to rebuild because
they can't do it, though. They're stuck in that way. If anybody has draft questions, I'll give them a minute or two. I'll answer a few before we head out.
Yep. Quickly in the chat. So and I'll just we'll touch on
list. I have my new list up at sportsology.com. If you want to check it out, I actually put 55 on this list. I won't do another 55, even though EP Rinkside will require me to do more, I'll do a little more for them, but I won't make it public.
We'll touch on it more tomorrow because the races are really intriguing in the West. But right now, the 3 teams in the Central are separated by a point. In the Pacific, it's not sure that Vegas or LA will finish in first, and the consolation prize there is Edmonton. So we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah, just LA against, watching them against the Blues, they were a sieve. I get that Phoenix Copley's in net, but their defense still is not what I would call tight.
No, but they're, like I said, they're 2 points behind Vegas. And if Vegas finishes in second, they play Edmonton. I'll tell you right now, if Vegas plays Edmonton, I'm taking Vegas, and not because I hate Edmonton, but because
I would take Vegas too.
Yeah, I think Vegas can shut down or not shut down, but limit.
I will mention this because it's going to go up in the next day or two. I did interview Gavin Maloof, who is the minority partner of the Vegas Golden Knights. He also owns a lot of other things. Look for that on Sportsology. I did talk to him a little bit about the Golden Knights. So, and he's going to come up off the post in the future. So interesting guy, very happy where his team is. And I don't blame him. I mean, I would feel pretty good about my team right now too.
And I'm thinking we're safe to say that Seattle is going to make the playoffs because they have 88 points, 72 games. So they have 10 remaining. Winnipeg has played 2 more games. They're 3 points behind them. So that's the second wild card. And then Calgary is 81. They're seven points behind with 2 games. Seattle's got 2 games in hand on them. Nashville.
I think Calgary's done.
Yeah. Nashville's 8 points behind, same amount of games. But as I said before, they lost Duchesne. So I think Seattle's got one of the 2 spots. Let's see here. Vegas goaltending isn't going to. How did the Cornell goalie? I don't know. Okay, I'm not sure.
I don't know because I was covering other games, so a lot of times I was traveling when these things were going on, so I didn't see that game at all.
Gary, this will be the only question that we're going to go. Tank-On has Detroit drafting Oliver Moore at 8. I would definitely be happy with that.
Yeah, I think there's a chance Moore can be there, but I wouldn't hang my hat on it. I have Moore ranked 8th, but that doesn't mean he'll go 8th in a mock. And I think it'll depend on where Smith goes, Will Smith, his teammate, and Delaware Dvorsky. If Dvorsky drops, which he might on other, in real life, then Moore's not going to be there. You'll have to trade up because he'll go 6 or 7 then. So that's the worry. So don't get your heart set yet because I'm not sure that's happening.
Okay, we'll end there, and we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.